I'm glad. I'll take it. I'd rather be too hot than too cold.
Welcome to the Maumee City Council meeting. It's Monday, January 6th at 6:15 p.m. Would you call the roll, please?
Barrow.
Yes.
Fiskus.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
Kurt.
Yes.
Linebach.
Yes.
Noonan.
Yes.
Puffenberger.
Yes.
Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next up is Committee of the Whole. President Barrow.
Thank you, Mayor McDonald. As council has in front of them the agenda. Any questions or concerns? Councilman Linebach?
Thank you, Council President Barrow. This past weekend, I read emails from 3 Planning Commission members, and each person expressed some serious concerns about some of the changes in the proposed Ordinance 002-2025, which is on our agenda tonight as item 9D. I move that we table item 9D until such time we can discuss their concerns in a public meeting.
I believe there's some clarification on that. Dr. Birch?
What are the concerns?
Oh.
This is a public meeting.
Well, on my agenda, it's 001. Is that a different ordinance?
Which one are we talking about?
002, the one that's on the agenda for tonight, item 9D.
Yeah.
I just received some of these emails today, actually, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, so I guess I have a question as to whether it's 001 or 002, because mine says 002, but it's been
Now
turned to
001.
1.
It's supposed to be 1?
Now it's been switched to 1, it looks like.
An email was sent.
Yeah, it was changed to number 1.
Okay, is it the
Well,
ordinance?
not in the copy I got today.
So is it the 002 from before
It was
switched to the
originally
number
002,
1?
now
Okay,
1.
yeah.
Right.
Okay. So it's the original ordinance that we had looked over? That's my
Yeah,
question.
002 in our packet when we originally got it is now 001, because it's
Okay.
the only one left in the meeting, right?
Okay, thanks.
So what was 002 is now 001.
Yes.
This is the changes to 1335?
There's a 1300
Or is
series
it-
and an 1100 series. I think the 1300 changes series. to
Yeah, the 1100 series? That's the one that is now 001, 2025, is that correct?
Correct.
Yes, my motion stands, that we
Okay.
table that ordinance until we can have public discussion with the Planning Commission members who have expressed those concerns.
Okay, do we have a second on that?
So I guess I have a question on that.
Sure.
So how would that look if we did,
Unless there's a second.
okay.
Yeah. Roberts.
Okay.
Sorry. You have to open up discussion.
Seeing none, we'll move on with the Committee of the Whole.
Okay, excuse me, Councilman Linebach has another.
Thank you, Council President. In light of that, I would move that we move consent calendar item 9D to new business as 10A.
And do I have a second
Oh,
on
it's
that?
consent.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
I could talk.
Can it still be a first reading if moved into new business, right? So I guess my
We have
question.
to take a vote on the second, don't we?
We have a motion and a second.
now.
We'll go ahead with some discussion. Who would like any comments? We have a motion and a second. Any comments?
Yes, I have a comment.
Go ahead.
So I guess my comment is, or my question, is, so what would that public meeting be that includes the commission? So right now, we're on first reading of 3 readings. So my thought was for us to discuss some of the concerns that the planning commission members brought to our attention, because I also have those with me, and then go ahead and work through those. I guess what would the public meeting look like with the commission? Would we have a planning commission meeting that we then talk about it at? Can someone answer that for me, or is it only
Well,
comments allowed?
Go ahead, please.
That would be my suggestion, to allow all the Planning Commission members present to hold a meeting. Anybody who wants to come can come. and they can explain in their own words what their concerns are. Because it's also my experience that what tends to happen is that however the ordinance is originally proposed, ends up being very close to that at the end. And I think the time to make changes are before it gets introduced. And I think a discussion with the planning commission members would really provide that.
So I guess my other question is, so since this is just the first reading and essentially won't get approved until the third reading, could we not have a discussion about some of the concerns now, have a public meeting with the planning commission people in the meantime, between the first and second reading, first and third? I guess that's what I'm asking.
No, we can,
Yeah, I mean, that's typically what we do. It's like we start the discussion with the first reading, we do edits, have a discussion with the planning commission, others, whoever wants to give input, and then we continue on, or we don't, and we stop it then. I guess that's
correct.
what I'm wondering.
Correct. If we went forward with it, we could still do the process. That's why the purpose for the first reading is in place.
Yes.
May I amend my motion?
Sure.
I'd still like to make the motion, a motion to have that public meeting with the planning commission prior to the second reading.
I'll second that motion.
Any other discussion?
We have
Can I
two
clarify
motions.
something?
Hold on.
Now we have two motions.
Go ahead. If you-
Yeah, so you're putting two things into one motion here.
No,
So,
I retracted my first motion. I amended it.
well, you've done that the first time. Now you had a second one that was for
Oh,
putting it to the new business portion of the agenda. So that motion, we still need to vote on. Then we can certainly entertain,
A third
the
motion.
public meeting in between. 'Cause I have no problem with both of them. I'm just saying we gotta, in my mind, we have to follow, unless I'm wrong. with
I
the
believe you're
logic,
correct,
But I think we
Councilman
need to do
Udine.
that as two separate motions.
You're correct, Scott.
Okay.
Yes. So we have an initial motion on the table to, the initial motion was to,
Put it to the new business item A.
Yeah.
Correct?
yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
and that's been seconded. Any further discussion on that? All right, we'll call the roll.
Clarification.
Clarification, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Phil, just like I talked to you this weekend, the questions they had on here deal with something the Planning Commission unanimously approved and recommended to this board, who unanimously approved it 3 years ago. The same questions. What Alan is doing is putting it in the codified ordinance. It's already in the zoning ordinance. So if this doesn't pass, now you have a code of ordinances that don't comply with the zoning ordinance, which this council has approved. So having a disparate difference between those, Alan was trying to correct that. So it's more of a cleanup than it is anything else. There's nothing being taken away from a planning commission member that already they gave up themselves almost 3.5 years ago to do administrative reviews on site plans, so you took politics out of whether or not somebody got their site plan approved. The other issue is whether or not the council can override a planning commission decision on something that's a variance, which you cannot do. We've discussed this as well, is that we have a division of powers in government that has a legislative branch. You make laws, you don't interpret that law, and you don't adjudicate that law. We have boards of zoning appeals that can override a council decision, and that's what Alan was trying to correct. You have a planning commission that can vote, but council can't. They will approve zoning amendments, but they don't look at an agreement by the planning commission and then adjudicate that decision, because they made the law to begin with. There's separation of powers, and that's what I was trying to explain before, is that this is already in our zoning ordinance. We're simply putting it in the codified ordinances, because Alan will go through our ordinances to make sure they're congruent with other ordinances. So it seems like we're reinventing, trying to go back to the planning commission to change their ordinance to make site plan review now administrative, non-administrative, and go through that process again of picking apart site plans in a public meeting and having somebody who wants to develop here take a year and a half to develop a site, when in fact that process is streamlined now. Because administratively, we just say, do you meet the ordinance or don't you? And if you don't, you can either go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, or you can go administratively to sign a development agreement that kind of makes accommodations in a negotiated site plan. So that's what we have in the zoning ordinance now. I'm simply saying, That's all this is, a correction in our current city code to accommodate that, so they're not working against each other. So I just want to make clear.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and expedite the motion in the second, which is basically moving it to new business. We'll call the roll on that.
Barrow,
Yes.
Viscus.
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Lineback.
Yes.
Noonan,
Yes.
Pfaffenberger.
Yes.
Okay, so 9D is now 10A.
Are there any other questions?
Well, I just want to respond to Dr. Birch. I can't speak to what the Planning Commission did 3 years ago. I don't even know if I was on council when that happened. But I'm sure the only people that can explain why two attorneys on the Planning Commission that have expressed concerns, wrote that email, they're probably the only ones that can explain that to me in the context of what you said about having approved something 3 years ago.
Well,
That's why I wanted to hear from them before we have a second reading.
can I?
Well, can we reserve discussion until we get to that item,
Sure.
please? Okay.
Is there anything else the House Council has?
Isn't there a second motion?
Yeah, there is still a second motion, though. We have to dispose of it some
Yeah.
fashion.
Was that the motion to have a
Public meeting.
Yeah.
public meeting before the second reading?
Can he withdraw that?
I'll withdraw that.
Your
Thank you.
second does too, sorry.
Thank you.
I'll withdraw the second.
Okay. Do we need to call the roll on the withdrawal?
No.
No.
Thank you. Go ahead, proceed.
Thank you, Mayor McDonald. Any other questions or concerns? Haven't seen none. This concludes Committee of the Whole.
Okay, we'll move to citizen comments. We have a handful here. If you would, please come to the microphone, just state your name, and if you live, your address. Guy Cameron? Welcome, Mr. Cameron.
Yes, my name's Guy Cameron. I live at 740 Grand Valley. I'm here reluctantly. I don't like to really, this is my second meeting in my life to ever be at a council meeting. And so I'm here basically on two things, because of how our taxes are being used. I have some questions. I have questions regarding interpretation of this tree ordinance that's going on, and those things affect me. So I'm here. So here's how I'm going to start. I'm going to read off of this as best I can. I'm very limited in my vision, so I apologize. And I'm really trying not to be too argumentative, but I have statements to make. Is the city of Maumee still operating with a negative income balance sheet from the annexation of the land where the mall sits? That's my first question. And I'm going to make a statement from that. Maumee, when the mall was built, operated somewhere between $1.5 and $1.8 million in the red per year on a sliding scale for about a decade. The majority of tax revenues went to Toledo and Waterville. Maumee had to provide police, fire, EMS, causing an expansion of personnel, new buildings to be built, more salaries to be paid, expanded retirement funding, increased health benefits, etc. My second question, will the city of Maumee be operating with a negative balance sheet with the building of apartments at Arrowhead Park and at the Black Road or Mall area, since Maumee provides, again, police, fire, and EMS? Springfield and Anthony Wayne school districts get the majority of tax revenues from Arrowhead Park. Do the communities of Waterville, Springfield, and Toledo receive tax revenue as well? Maumee schools receive nothing. What does the city of Maumee receive? Remember, we expanded EMS services because we in administration stated we will not abandon our neighbors. Thirdly, Was EMS actually expanded to service these new projects or service Maumee Town, Monclova Township? How does EMS expansion really help Maumee? The Maumee taxpayers don't really seem to benefit. I ask because the decision makers in Maumee reneged on their original deal with the county and surrounding communities, yet cost Maumee City taxpayers a large increase in real estate taxes. I also want to state that it seems like the city administrator has a conflict of interest
That's 3 minutes.
by
Can
not
you,
living here.
that's 3 minutes, but you can wrap up just
Okay.
what your final thoughts there.
Okay. Has a conflict of interest on some of the questions, concerns I raised, as those areas receiving increased services directly benefit the area he resides within. The school revenues seem to benefit other areas than Maumee as well. I kindly ask, what is the benefit to the citizens of Maumee?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we'll try to answer your question at the end. Tina Ross? Welcome, Ms. Ross.
Hi. My name is Tina Ross. I'm at 1701 Trailview, Maumee, Ohio. My question is, snow removal or salting is down River Road from the end of the park to heading towards Waterville to Dutch Road. Wanted to know if that was our responsibility for Maumee, because it has been just ice for the past 3 to 4 years. And I was wondering if that's our responsibility or if it's Waterville's, or if I could get an answer some way or another.
I might be able to help you with that.
Okay.
So our city limit is Jerome Road, right where the wastewater treatment plant is. So we typically take care of down to Jerome Road, and then anything further towards Dutch would be Waterville Township.
Okay. So where Jerome Road is, that is not being done. So because last year, a car went down and hit a house. And so somebody had, and it's very icy in the mornings when I go to work.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick
Yeah,
answer.
you might be able to help.
Just to be clear, there are no houses inside the city at our limits at Jerome Road. So if you were there, you were in Waterville Township. If a car had slid into a yard, that would be Waterville Township. That's not the city of Maumee.
But it's still up to Jerome Road, it's still ice.
Okay, thank you for letting
Thank
us
you.
know. I appreciate that. Lauren Godlewski?
Hi, Lauren at 1417 Shepherd. Good evening. I just wanted to express my gratitude to council and citizens from Ryan and I. The kindness, the prayers, the gesture, and the help has been overwhelming. To everyone who supports us, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. For those that are following, Ryan's brain surgery is January 15th and his arm surgery on January 29th. We're excited for what the future holds. Regarding the recall, as everyone knows, I don't support it, but I, along with other citizens, have some questions directly for Mr. Leinbach. If you're willing, I'd love for you to answer these publicly at your turn to speak. Have you signed the recall against your current council members? Why have you remained silent during the recall? Do you support the recall? And do you agree that if your fellow council members are being recalled, you should have been included? That's all.
Thank you. So we won't respond to that since you've asked Mr. Leinbach to. He'll have comments at the end, at his choice. Valerie Giovanucci? Welcome.
Hi, Valerie Giovanucci, 628 Midfield Drive. My concerns are taxpayer citizens' tax money. I do have an issue with the crosswalk paint that was just done on all these other streets here, mainly downtown, it's very shoddy job. So to me, I feel like a lot of that's going to have to be redone, and that's going to cost us money again. So if you look at all the crosswalks and the arrows, there's hardly any paint there. So to me, it's a very shoddy job. Secondly, the other taxpayer thing I wanted to address is when we had those really high winds, I had my street lamp blow over, fall down, crack my driveway, and I had reported it to Edison about the base of the pole being absolutely corroded and very compromised. And good thing I did in September, because when we had those high winds and it broke down, it caused me a big problem. Fire trucks were there from 11 p.m. to 5:30 in the morning, and Toledo Edison still did not come. So to me, that's taxpayer money sitting there in front of my house with the fire truck, 2 or 3 of them, right? And not only that, it makes me wonder, because I think I addressed this to Mr. Birch, and he said that the city doesn't have any responsibility for those things. It's Toledo Edison. I'd like to know, why is it that we don't have some type of crew that inspects those periodically to make sure that they're submitting that information? So, I mean, I could have been outside with my dog. That electric line absolutely snapped and sat in my driveway hot. I couldn't go out the house. I felt like I was hostage in my own home. But needless to say, the main question is, how's come we don't have some type of committee or something that checks stuff like that for the residents? We have it where they go and pick up Christmas trees, which I'm totally I'm against that totally, because I've requested on more than one occasion help with trimming my trees back, right? And I'm told, well, the city doesn't do that, but yet they're going to go pick up Christmas trees. I have an issue with that because I feel like I'm being discriminated against. I don't have Christmas trees. I don't believe in doing that. That's such a waste. But if the city's going to use taxpayer money to go pick up Christmas trees, then why is it they can't help seniors like myself trim back the trees, since I know that the Edison has some responsibility as long as it's not hanging over the live wires, but at the same time, I feel like, thank you.
Thank you.
But I would like an answer on some of those things.
Sure.
Especially the crosswalk paint.
Yes, thank you. Ryan Spangler?
Hi, thank you. Ryan Spangler, 1417 Shepherd Drive. I also wanted to thank everybody, along with Lauren and what she said earlier. The second thing is I wanted to express that I know sometimes my efforts are questioned or are not quite perfect or whatever, but I've held my same stance with all the issues going on since the beginning. The only thing that's really changed is I've learned that it's better to maybe stop looking at people with opposing views and stuff, villainizing them and stuff. It works out much better to look at everybody like a neighbor and not an opponent. And so that's definitely helped me out a little bit lately and helped open doors to have conversations where many of the conversations by the end of them, we're not even talking about politics anymore, but we're talking about the kids in school and this and that and everything else. So thirdly, I had something that I've been kicking around for the last couple months, and I just wasn't seeming to get anywhere with it. I text Josh this morning. He could probably laugh about it, but because on 3 separate occasions I asked him pretty much the same question, and he gave me an answer that was really spot on, but something just didn't seem right. And of course my notion was right. I was asking the wrong question, so that's why I wasn't getting anywhere with it. But instead of bringing that forward tonight, I'm going to go under the advice Mayor Carr. He's been helping me a little bit lately and giving me advice, and I was talking to him today, and he told me to maybe wait on it and approach it in a different manner. So I'm definitely going to respect his advice, and you know, hopefully everybody here had him in mind during the holidays and stuff. And what a just a great guy, you know what I mean? Like, I miss him around. So, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Evan?
Sorry. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name's Evan. I live at 724 Inwood Place, Maumee. I hope everybody enjoyed the holiday season, the snow we're getting, finally. I really just wanted to address the people considering signing the recall petition, because I think we've all gotten flyers in our mail saying how bad the Maumee government is and how much they want to fire Dr. Birch and all these bad things. So I would like to share a message sent by the self-proclaimed leader, Danny Cobb, who sent a text message to Dr. Birch, which you can find at WTOL. In quote, he says, "The easiest way to end it / silence the opposition lies with me. Not the money, not the people like Denny, not the groups like CMAC with the committee. The ones they follow is me. Trust me, I don't know why either. $80,000 a year, a $2,500 sign-on bonus, and I need proper dental work." So somebody's trying to extort our local government for power and is promoting this anti-recall movement, except for against Phil Leinbach, who I also have the same questions against. Why aren't you getting recalled? It seems nonsensical that you're now not somehow a part of it. This shows that a lot of these people are trying to find a self-indulging fantasy to just yahoo around and LARP like our civil government, which leaves us citizens footing the bill. Another key part of this movement and why people are so soundedly mad is to fire Dr. Birch, which you'll notice in his annual contract, 180 days severance, which is over $100,000 of our taxpayer cash in the drain for somebody who does 3 jobs for our city. And to replace those 3 positions, if we fired him, would probably cost over $250,000 to replace the Director of Public Safety, City Administrator, and Director of Public Services. Isn't it funny how the recall movement cries about a lack of transparency when they will not release their plan nor their candidates and show nothing for us citizens on who they're trying to change our point of views? So I hope this will dissuade you and not sign, or I hope you will consider withdrawing your petition or your name from the petition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move to adoption of the agenda as revised. So I'll need a motion to approve the agenda as revised. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor McDonald. I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda as revised.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. We'll call the roll.
Barrow.
Yes.
Fiskus.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
Kurt.
Yes.
Leinbach.
Yes.
Noonan.
Yes.
Pufferberger.
Yes.
And approval of meeting minutes for December 16th, 2024, and December 23rd, 2024.
Thank you, Mayor. I will move to approve regular meeting minutes of December 16th, 2024, and December 23rd, 2024 special meeting.
And I'll second that motion.
Thank you. We'll call the roll on the meeting minutes.
Barrow.
Yes.
Fiskus.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
Kurt.
Yes.
Leinbach.
Yes.
Noonan.
Yes.
Pufferberger.
Yes.
There's no petitions and communications. We'll go to consent calendar. There's 3 items. I'll take a motion to approve the consent calendar and then a second, and then we'll discuss it.
Thank you, Mayor McDonald. I will move to approve all consent calendar items.
Thank you, Mayor McDonald. I'll second that motion.
Okay, 9A is a recommendation from the city administrator authorizing the clerk to return transfer request for a liquor permit for Dale's Bar without requesting a hearing to the Ohio Department of Liquor Control for change of corporate stock ownership. I think it's basically Grax is moving that to his son, Kane. I believe that's the only change. Is that correct?
I think it's just, changing the form of ownership, I believe, in the corporate structure maybe.
Okay.
So it's not really changing anything else as to the license.
Standard procedure. Does that still require police approval, Chief? Does that go to you if it's just a transfer like that? Yeah, okay. 9B, recommendation from the city administrator authorizing the clerk to return transfer request for a liquor permit for Smoky Bones Bar and Fire Grill without requesting a hearing to the Ohio Department of Liquor Control for change of corporate stock ownership. Same thing as A.
Correct.
Okay, any discussion on that? Any clarity? And then 9C is a recommendation from the mayor approving the agreement between eMerge and the City of Maumee Municipal Court for scanning services. And that's the standard contract that we do with them. Correct.
This is the clerks finishing up their scanning project of all their records. It's just like the third phase of the scanning. It's just a remainder of that contract.
Okay. Anything further from council? Call the roll.
Barrow.
Yes.
Fiskus.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
Kurt.
Yes.
Steinbach.
Yes.
Noonan. Pufferberger.
Yes.
10A is a recommendation from the city administrator. This is a first reading, approving ordinance 001-2025, an ordinance amending portions of chapter 1105.08 of the Maumee Codified Ordinances and ordinance 106-2020 as to administrative procedures and enforcement. We can take a motion and a second on this, and we can discuss it.
Thank you, Mayor McDonald. I will move to approve ordinance 001-2025, an ordinance amending portions of chapter 1105.08 of the Maumee Codified Ordinances and ordinance 106-2020 as to the administrative procedures and enforcement.
Could just be approved the first reading.
Just approve the first reading.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Discussion on the floor on this issue? Yes, Ms. Pufferberg.
Thank you. Well, I guess one of the things I wanted to kind of just jump back on where we left it before is it sounds like some of the concerns that have been brought to our attention by some planning commission folks are a result of something that happened 3 years ago. So we'll discuss with them what that could be, but that would need to be a change of that. Is that correct, Patrick?
Yeah, you'd have to change the zoning ordinance
Yeah.
too and go through that whole process.
So that'll be kind of part of it that we can talk to about them. But I guess, we talked about, so the cleaning up, I saw, majority of, we switched it from zoning administrator to urban planning manager, which I know some other communities do zoning administrator too, but that was just more accurate with the person who held that position prior. Whereas the person in charge of it now, I guess I'm asking, is urban planning manager. That's why we're switching it to that.
That's what it's called.
But I guess one question I do have about the time frame, because I know one of the questions that was brought up is why we're switching from 6 months for time frame to appeal to 30 days. And whether, if there is issue with that, I'm wondering, I guess, whether there would make sense, something would make sense in between. I guess
It's just a long time to have something languishing out there without knowing if somebody's going to appeal the decision that's been made.
A BZA appeal is typically 30 days.
a BZA appeal is?
Correct.
Okay.
Anything else on this issue? I do know the Plan Commission does not typically have regularly scheduled meetings. It's usually when they have an agenda that comes up. So if that is something that you want, we can move that. We can have our municipal clerk contact them.
Mr. Mayor, I think that would be very helpful, to hear directly from them, have them schedule such a meeting.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, we'll call the roll on the first, call the roll on approving the first reading.
Barrow.
Yes.
Fiskus.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
Kurt.
Yes.
Steinbach.
Yes.
Noonan.
Yes.
Pufferberger.
Yes.
Okay, there's no old business, so we'll move to comments. I have one issue that I would like to refer to the Finance and Economic Development Committee. We have two street projects that we're looking at, High Street and Inwood Place. They're very deteriorated streets, and they're in drastic need of repair and rehabilitation. I would like to move that to committee I do believe that we're waiting on bids as to what that is exactly going to cost, so it would probably make sense to wait till those numbers come in until we have a meeting on that. That would allow the public to come and comment on that as well. So I'd like to move that to the Finance and Economic Development Committee, both those street rehabilitation projects. And then I actually got a letter from a gentleman that lives in the Grand Rapids area. He is a business owner. He owns 3 culvers in the Grand Rapids area, actually the suburbs, Cascade, Comstock Park, and Lowell. And he thought it was important to write a letter about his impression of the city when he came through. So he writes, "I want to compliment you and the leaders of your community with the investment in the city of Maumee. My daughter attends Bowling Green State University, and we stayed in the Perrysburg area for Parents' Weekend this past holiday, right before the break, and happened to travel through your quaint city. Being a member of the board of the Downtown Development Committee for Cascade Township, where one of my restaurants is located, I pay attention to aesthetics of each community I visit, the streetscape, building facades, and the welcoming gateways. Your city got my attention as we came across the bridge, and the arches over the roadway did their job of calming traffic. And as Nancy in your office shared with me, the work on them is not quite done yet. They are exactly what our community needs to again, not only welcome people to our community, but also get drivers to slow down as they enter the business district of Cascade. So as I picked up my daughter last Friday for the Christmas break, I had to stop back, take pictures for our board, and stop into the administration building to learn more about the arches in your city. I'm sorry you were not available to talk again, but Nancy and the other administrative assistant, which I think was Gina, which I did not get her name, but I believe it was Gina, did an awesome job being advocates for your city. Again, congratulations, and the next time I come down to visit my daughter in Bowling Green, I will see if I can make an appointment to visit and steal some ideas and visit your fine restaurants. All the best for a blessed holiday. Sincerely, Steve Stefan. So appreciate his feedback from somebody who's never been here before. And we'll move on to the first council person, Mr. Barrow.
Thank you, Mayor McDonald. That's a nice letter. It's a nice opportunity for people visiting the area who have not seen it, and it's transformed into what it has. Thank you. I have a couple of things to read tonight. One's on our sewer issue, and one's about the move to recall 6 council members and a mayor. I've weaned this down, I think, pretty quickly here. So from the sewer issue, we were able to craft a remedy that the sewer has been an ongoing problem for over 40 years. With our input in many meetings with the EPA, we were able to accomplish an ordinance that was widely accepted by our residents. Many informational meetings were up for our residents we had here. The residents are now currently meeting with their administrator to understand how their specific problem, their house, their property, how that would be handled and the cost they may or may not incur. The cost of doing this large undertaking will be paid for through your sewer rates that were increased some time ago. Everybody I've spoken to is fully behind this process and the way that the plan is going to be paid for, or the project rather. The sewer problem is something that we inherited over the last 30 to 40 years, but we are the ones who are responsible to fix it. For that, I'm glad to be a part of the solution. And lastly, I don't enjoy this part of the job, but now it has become necessary to do so. Over the past few months, a lot of our citizens and non-citizens have asked me, what's going on now in Maumee with the recall? Did you break the law? Did you do something that caused this action? It's being largely fueled by multimillionaires who own a lot of apartment properties, as well as others who own rental income property. Their Trapped in Maumee campaign was successful, having the non-occupied landlord-tenant ordinance defeated. They have not stopped there, and as some have told me, they want their pound of flesh and run Maumee as they see fit. This group has unlimited funds, so flyers and newspaper ads will be consuming your mailboxes once again. In their mind, it makes sense to remove six councilmen and a mayor. Some in the group are named, some choose to stay behind the curtain. However, why are the residents left in the dark as to who they're putting forward? The recall group have distributed and continue to send out half-truths, untruths, and inflammatory false narratives. Let's talk about transparency. That's a big drum that's been beat lately. If you've tried to get on one of their Facebook groups, as I've been told, because I have not, you can't do so unless you disagree with everything the city is doing. If you speak positively about the city, they insult you and they block you from the group. Transparency. In their publications, which I think we're going to still speak about tonight, they cite no sources, but they just throw numbers out there. So I've learned if you're told the same thing over and over again, there's nothing to combat it, it must be true. Nobody's saying it's not true. Tonight we're saying it's not true. They have no resources that they would publicize. So I'd like to know who the other 6 people are who they're going to handpick to replace our council and who's their new mayor. This current council has over 40 years of combined experience. The answer is given is that they want to stay anonymous because they are afraid of being attacked. Welcome to politics. If you've been watching or attending a council meeting or got a flyer in the mail, read an editorial in the Mirror or on social media, see who's doing the attacking. It is ongoing. Them wanting to play the stay anonymous card, it doesn't fly. You don't deserve that as Maumee citizens. Before you sign a petition, which will historically change your city government, ask yourself, why is this being pushed so hard by big business? And why is it largely subsidized by big business like our last election in November? They spent approximately over $120,000 to support 3 candidates. Who are their handpicked people? I would want to know who it is that they have in the wings. It's a fair question for you to ask them. Who is their new administrator? What's his history, his education, his past job experiences? Who is it they're going to put forward for Maumee residents not to be content with their silence? I said, don't be content. Ask them these questions. My promise has never changed. I still promise to serve all of our citizens and the interests of Maumee. Sincerely and thankfully, Gabriel Barrow.
Thank you, Mr. Barrow. Mr. Fiskus?
Thank you, Mayor. Happy New Year to everyone. I do want to get together with with the Parks and Rec Committee and the Public Information Committee and figure out a date we can each have kind of a beginning of the year, sit down and look ahead. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, and you'll organize that in the near future?
I'll get with them
Okay.
after this.
All right, thank you. Mr. Harris?
Yeah, I'm going to keep this short and sweet. Thanks, Mayor McDonald. Just want to say I hope everyone had a really safe and prosperous New Year. I know I had a lot of good memories made this year with my family, so hopefully you guys did too. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kurt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I received a telephone call this morning from a fellow I went to high school with, a young man like myself, who had called the city to, he was concerned whether his sewer system was compliant with EPA regulations and so forth. It turned out he was compliant. He was on Thackeray Road, so he wasn't particularly concerned because living on Thackeray Road, his house was built since the 1980s. Anyway, he wanted to tell me that 2 people came out to do the inspection and look at stuff. And he said they were, I wish I had the text he sent me, very polite, very professional, and he wanted me to know, he wanted me to tell our administrator how pleased he was with the process. He was confident that he'd be okay, but still a little bit nervous that he might be told he's looking at hundreds of dollars of repairs. But mainly he wanted me to let Dr. Birch know that these people were very polite, very professional, and that's, I believe that's all I have. It is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kurt. Mr. Linebaugh?
Thank you, Mayor McDonald. It's not usual that people are particularly interested in my opinions on things, but it seems like I've been asked by 2 people tonight to share in my thoughts on a couple things. So I have 2 quick answers. Why am I not being recalled? Ask the people who launched the recall. And I think, Lauren, to your question, you had something to do with just thoughts on the recall. I believe that people on both sides of that issue are pretty passionate. It is a legal remedy that's available for people to use in our country. They're using it. Who am I to stand in the way or say it's good or bad? That's all I really have to say on it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Noonan?
Thank you, Mayor McDonald. I will pass. Thank you.
All right, and Ms. Puffenberger?
Thank you. I am happy to say that in the new year, I scheduled my sewer inspection, and it's not until March because I was pleased to hear that we have over 300 requests now. So I think that's great news. 300 already. And that's all.
Thank you. And Mr. Birch?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I've started to give reports on things that are happening in the city, I want to give some stuff and then follow it up with some other issues. But I want to talk about some projects that we're working on right now, if I find all my paperwork here. Right now, we have a number of projects that are being contemplated, both in Arrowhead and around the city. We've got a couple of projects we're working on downtown. If even 50% of the projects that we're contemplating right now for economic development came to fruition, it would be over $500 million in investment in our community. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of tax revenue that isn't paid by our residents directly. In fact, it helps stabilize rates and taxes in the future. Some of the cases, just as you know, Metropolitan Holdings, and I'll have some things to speak about that in a minute, in detail about some of the things that were sent out that were incorrect. The Enclave at Fallen Timbers, we're working on a development agreement there. We're working on Pride One. Their signature should be in tomorrow. That's a development out at Fallen Timbers. It's 173 units. We're working on Wendy's right now, the one that was burned out, to do 2 different uses on that property. We have working on a florist shop, another one out of Parkway Plaza. We are working on an agreement with the UAW Training Center in Arrowhead. They're selling their smaller building to a larger building. 15 or so times a year, they'll have conferences and training sessions there that bring in hundreds and hundreds of people. We also have other people looking for buildings. I can't say who they are now because Kurt and I just met with them today. And it looks like they're going to try to schedule a closing on that property sometime in early February. Sheets, the new Sheets that's going next to Chick-fil-A will be, if you've seen right now, if you've driven by there, you'll see they've started to take some of the old trees down that they have to replace, some of the ones that are dangerous. There are trees they cannot take down because they've been restricted, but also there is soil erosion control fencing around it. I have a final inspection to do tonight after this meeting to make sure that all that soil erosion control is in place so they can finalize tearing the building down. That project will be underway very soon. Landings at Delta Crossing. This is a 60-unit building being built across from a fire station. As I said last time, it's senior housing, 55 and over, income controlled. So, like I said before, if you're a senior citizen that's on Social Security only or a small retirement, you can afford to live there. They're very nice units. They're very tall ceilings. They're loft-type structures, and they're within walking distance of uptown. We have we're working on a development agreement for Marriott Town Place Suites, although they have not announced yet for a new hotel. We're working on Redline Technologies and a development agreement for the building that was built by Tolson on Dussel Drive. We're working on a scraping of a Long John Silver's and replacing it. I may have said last time, I've never seen a new Long John Silver's anywhere. So I'm a little surprised when we got the call. It was a little odd, but we are working on that. We are Everdry. We have a signed development agreement from Everdry. It's a large complex that goes behind Spartan Chemical. Everdry does basement refinishing, does these kind of things for basement waterproofing. It seems apropos they would be here. I don't think they located here because of that. They had some problems in Springfield Township and Toledo getting approval the last 3 years for the thing, but it was the development agreement process. They got held up by planning commissions for a very long period of time. The development agreement process here, very nice buildings. And when you see the illustrations, I think the mayor will be showing illustrations of it at the State of the City address. You'll see some really nice-looking complex. The idea is that we use development agreements to negotiate better-looking buildings, more sustainable buildings over time, instead of picking people apart for years and years and years over the color of their building and the product they're using. You do that administratively. In fact, We're working on a very large development right now with their attorneys out of Southern Ohio, not Metropolitan Holdings, and when we told them that they would go through an administrative approval, they wouldn't have to go through that public process of going through the building materials and everything they use, their attorneys were like, this is refreshing. We don't go to communities that actually embrace business like this and make sure that there's easily developable as quickly as you can. Because quite frankly, as being a developer myself, if somebody holds me up on stuff, I'm going to take it out of that project. You're just not going to know where it is. We want people to invest money the right way in our community, and if they do, that's the give and take of negotiating a development agreement. It's very hard to enforce a zoning ordinance with the courts. A lot of them don't understand fully. There are some very good courts out there, very good judges, but some of them don't fully understand the enforcement mechanism of zoning ordinances. They're difficult to apply, which is why we have the development agreement language in here, and this ordinance that was put on to new business today is so that every court understands specific performance of a contract. And if a developer signs a contract, says they're going to do something, they have to do it. Everybody will recognize. They're going to ask them, did you sign this contract? You did. You have to do that. And I'll give you an idea. There's a business going in right now that put some stuff in that wasn't according to that contract, and they have to replace it. They understood because sometimes those things get mixed up between the developer, between the builder, between the engineer, the landscape architect, and the architect, and they're working off a different base plan. When something gets installed, you realize that what you installed wasn't correct, so those things have to be taken care of. That is part of the process we go through. The event center that you see out there, obviously, we're working on the permits for that. They're working on soliciting a contractor to do that work on Arrowhead, the one that stopped about 6-7 years ago. That will actually be an event center. That's happening again. We're working on some other economic development projects I can't speak of, a very large project right now, but I think you'll hear something hopefully in the next 3 weeks on at least one of those projects that we can announce, and maybe the mayor can do that there. I do want to bring up a case here. The sewers. I've had 21 meetings with couples, landlords. One landlord owned 22 homes in our town. I've had nothing but positive feedback from those meetings. I've either gone to your house or you come into the office, weekend, holidays, and we sit and talk. Sometimes the meetings last 2 or 3 hours because people want to talk about other things the city's doing, or they want to talk about simply about how the sewer process affects them. They've been really great meetings. And some of those people were part of the recall group originally and said they are no longer part of the recall group because of the negativity associated with that. Not because it's not people's right to recall individuals they're not happy with, because they believe that the methods and the untruths that are being told to get that recall and to get people angry and to keep them angry until September is a very difficult task. I've been the brunt of that. And I've given this speech kind of before, that I want people to understand that, even though I've had 21 meetings and there's 322 inspections that have been signed up for or already completed, 144 of them completed, again, I am a human being. I got on Facebook and I noticed that people were complaining about me speaking at Ernest Brew Works. They have a speaker series, and they called me about 2 months ago and asked me to go there and speak on strong towns. Of course, 3 or 4 people that regularly attend this meeting got up and just said, I'm boycotting them, and I'm never going there again. But one of those in particular, I think the citizens in this audience and our citizens ought to start asking those people, who did you work for when the sewer was being dumped? Did you work for the city as a supervisor when the sewage was being dumped? Ask them. Look on that Facebook and then start asking people who are negative about that, and negative is usually on Facebook about the city, where did they work and what position did they hold with the city during the whole fiasco of dumping the sewage and not telling the truth about that sewage going to the river. That certainly wasn't me. Certainly wasn't anybody sitting on this table. But what I don't understand is that when we get through this process, I want to make it very clear, and this is not to put anything in anybody's face. This program here, I've had numerous people come to talk to me says this is not what I'm being told by recall people. 120% interest. I mean, there's some really things out there that's ridiculous. And that I'm still paying $60,000 to $80,000. I had a woman come in to me and said she had saved $50,000 to the improvement, and she had heard from somebody who came from her door that she would need more than $50,000 to repair her sewer, when in fact, she didn't spend any money to repair her sewer. And I had to tell her, take the $50,000 you've saved and go spend it on your family instead of spending it fixing your sewer. That's not what is happening here. There's a lot of disinformation. And I say disinformation, I say that mildly, because some of this stuff is not disinformation, it's outright lies. And you have to understand that some of these things that are being said, the people saying them are smart enough to know that these are lies. They have to know they're complete fabrications. And I'll give you an example. Metropolitan Holdings. A lot of stuff on that. A letter sent to citizens, this happened to go to one of my employees, about the recall. They make it a letter that looked like this, where somebody had to sign their name on. Most of them are township residents. Speaking of conflict of interest, most of them are township residents telling all of you that live here how to run their government. Okay? Talks about authorizing the reason for a recall is, first of all, I'm directing the city council to do things which isn't legal, and I don't do that. I don't make decisions. Yeah, I'm not afraid of what council decides, but I don't make those calls. I make recommendations. Authorized passing a sewer ordinance that ceased the sale of property in Maumee. That is not true. Again, a citizen referendum was initiated to reverse that decision. That was not reversed. The council reversed the decision. And by the way, the way that was done as an initiative, but it should have been a referendum, so the Board of Electors voted that out. That was never going to go to the people to be voted on. But council saw that the things needed based on citizen input, CMAQ's input, that this had to be done. Council rescinded a decision that has effectively implemented a solution that was drafted by citizens group that organized to take charge of matters council failed to effectively address. Now, I've talked to members of CMAQ just in the last couple of days, and I've worked really well with them, I believe, and we've come up with a lot of solutions. But I want to be clear. I don't care who gets the credit for whatever happens unless it's used to fire me. This document right here was written by me on a weekend. Me. Not because I want credit for it. I don't care who gets credit for things that are positive and done. I understand that when I take this job, that when things go wrong, I get the blame, and when things happen positively, I get no credit at all. I'm fine with that. But don't use it against me as if somebody created this document that didn't. This was presented to CMAQ. They were the first people I went to, even before I went to council, to present this. They had great input. Some of the negative incentives came that way because they knew that people wouldn't sign. The 322 people would not have signed up for these inspections had CMAQ not come up with the idea of a negative incentive on interest rate in the years if you waited. Those are great solutions. I hadn't thought of that. But the program itself was written by city staff, myself, over a weekend because we evolved over time. All I ask, I don't care who gets the credit. I don't care who wrote it. I just don't want it to be used against me to somehow think that I'm subhuman. Because some of the comments on Facebook and some of the threats I get, some of the texts I get, some of the calls I get, some of the people driving by my house, calling me names, throwing stuff in my yard, I mean, that is ridiculous. Somebody's going to get hurt. Last night, somebody came to my door at 8 o'clock at night, after dark. My wife and I didn't want to answer the door. We were afraid that somebody was on the other side of that with a gun. This is how bad it's getting. My kids are being followed. I'm being followed. I have somebody following me. That is ridiculous. There's nobody in this audience that would ever want their children or their parent or themselves to be subjected to this kind of vitriol and hate. Enough. Enough. But I want to go through some of the things, and I'm sorry this is taking so long, but I want to go through some of the things about Metropolitan Holdings and some of the disinformation here. Both of these, this card, case for recall, talks about how much of a tax abatement the city granted. Now, I don't grant tax abatements. But I want to tell you, there's a reason, and it says about all the experts in the field. Well, I want to make it very clear that the property this abatement was granted on, anybody around here in 1978 when Arrowhead was built? Yeah, so was I. And I got to tell you that just estimated, the owner of that land probably spent 300 grand mowing that property over the last 46 years. It wasn't developed. Nobody developed there. Arrowhead was a dying park, and everybody knows it. Anybody who knows what a office park does, it lives for about 20 to 25 years max. And because the city had high enough standards and had brick buildings with trees, lots of trees, it held its value reasonably, even though half of it was vacant. The city council gave a tax abatement. They didn't give a $54 million tax abatement. Somebody didn't pay attention at the meeting. This is about facts. In the meeting, this is a summary that we were given. It's a $54.5 million construction cost, not an abatement. The abatement over a 15-year period is not worth $54 million. It's worth $2.2 million. The income tax derived, if only 25% of those in those buildings actually live in the city and work in the city, that's $3.9 million in revenue a year, easily offsetting the abatement you gave them. Not to mention that the discretionary income, and many of you understand the discretionary income calculation when a business locates a town, what kind of off-street revenue that creates, is $69 million over 15 years that other businesses and homeowners get as a result of that stuff being brought to them and those businesses operating. Now, can you imagine just a half of what I talked about tonight actually happened and the amount of revenue offset that brings this city to a heyday when it had more money than it knew what to do with in the 80s and 90s? We aren't there now, but we have to reinvest in our infrastructure to do that. I also look at some of the things about 510 rental units. It talks about how many rental units we have in town. We have at least 2,300 rental units, not 1,500. Most of those are not houses. They are rental apartment units. And rental apartment units, as you know, in age, get older and older, and people have to reinvest. There are some apartment units here that are really good shape. We understand that. But to use it, I guess when I see these documents, when I write something, I try, and I know that when Chelsea and CMAQ did the recommendations and all these things, they went and did all sorts of research about grant programs available. They did that and they researched it. They knew that what they were giving was factual. Even if some of the stuff we had already considered, they put a document together that was essentially factual. It's not that hard. The gentleman gave a presentation from Metropolitan Holdings that said this right on this screen, but yet somebody had decided that it was a 54. Now, I got to imagine that somebody who was involved in writing these documents said, wait a minute, that's not what was said. So either somebody around it was complicit in the distrust and the dishonesty, or we're just lying to ourselves, and we're lying to our community. And people are being led, and I'll say you got a lot of people with a lot of money. The top 1% in our country are leading most all of you down a path of thinking or believing that you're getting something when we keep our community the same. It doesn't work that way. It will never work that way, no matter what, and we all know it through history. Anybody seen pictures of 1978? Let's talk about 1978, because that's when Arrowhead started. Anybody remember what Uptown looked like in 1978? You can get tons of pictures of it. You wouldn't want that again. Would you want the go-go bar here again? Towns change. I mean, somebody's laughing out here because they remember all that. Oh, okay. Chelsea, you weren't born then. All right. But the point is, I was. Spent a lot of time in Maumee. But this idea that you have you got people who want to run for council, and I get that. There's a legislative process and a recall processes for that. But if you're deciding to put up an administrator that you've already got, I want to be very clear. If you have an administrator working on behalf of a recall group, That is not only unethical, it's highly unethical. So anybody who would do such a thing, you wouldn't want as your administrator, I don't know who that is, but I'm going to tell you right now, I would never do that way to any other administrator. The association, ICMA, would put papers in 3 of the largest papers surrounding you, denouncing you for being unethical and not being part of the association anymore. So if that's what you're doing, if that's what somebody's doing, they think they got this great administrator out there, they think that's got tons of experience, go ahead. And I want to correct one thing that Evan said. If you took those 3 positions, the expense to the city would be $625,000 a year to have 3 people to do what I do. 625 grand. And by the way, my severance is 260 days, not 180 days, so it would be even more expensive to do that. No problem leaving. I have no problem leaving. If people don't want me, I get that. But don't use lies to do it. There's a process to do this. Just don't use lies to do it. That hurts my kids and my family. And if you don't think that I have cousins, although I have 100 cousins in the Toledo and Maumee area and Perrysburg, they have to listen to this. They go into restaurants and people talk to them as if they don't even know who they are, and they're just blasting on me, saying terrible things that aren't true. But I got to tell you, when I see stuff on Facebook that I can't speak and you're going to boycott a business because I'm speaking there, it's not like I'm Richard Spencer, white supremacist, and people are campaigning not to let me speak at a college university. I'm Patrick Birch. I'm a guy who's trying to do the best thing for a town with my recommendations I can, with the expertise I think I've had for 40 years. That's all I'm doing. But to sit there and say that I don't have the right to free speech, but you do, is the antithesis of being a patriot. It is the antithesis of being a patriot. I used to have my dad, who was a city firefighter and a paramedic for the city of Toledo for 31 years. He's passed, God rest his soul, but a long time. Fought in the Korean War. And what he told me one day, somebody said there was a demonstration in the early 70s, somebody's burning a flag in downtown Toledo. And I got my dad, I said, it's a terrible thing to do. And he goes, it is a terrible thing to do. But I fought for his right to do that. I fought for his right to burn a flag. He didn't believe in the government. And we believe in the recall. Everybody up here believes the recall. When you want to redress your grievances, there's a process for that. Everybody deserves free speech. Everybody up here deserves that speech. And for sit there and to say that council doesn't have a say in their own outcome of their own community, or that I have no say, or, God forbid, I'll go through and answer some of these questions. Revised code in Ohio, 102.03 describes conflict of interest as a government official using their position to gain benefit for themselves. First of all, I would have to actually be a voter to make those calls. So, Mr. Cameron, I'll answer your question. There is no conflict of interest because I live in a different community. If that's the case, then there's a huge conflict by a number of people funding a recall effort to oust a council that don't live in this community either. So you can't have it both ways. You had questions, I'd love to answer them, but you answered them yourselves, unfortunately, incorrectly. Waterville didn't get any money off of Fallen Timbers. That's a TIF agreement that was settled as part of a lawsuit for an annexation between Toledo, Monclova, and Maumee. Tax revenue in the JEDs, not at Fallen Timbers. Fallen Timbers tax revenue is not shared. The property tax revenue is not shared with anybody but our TIF district that pays for the public improvements surrounding that mall. Now, Dana, world headquarters in the city, we don't share that revenue either. But Briarfield and all those businesses out there in Monclova, those are all in a JEDs. That was the separation, that the agreement that Toledo, Monclova, and Maumee, they split all that tax revenue, income tax revenue, 3 ways. That happens to this day. Jennifer accounts for that information, for those dollars, and it's brought a tremendous amount of money into the city. So Waterville didn't get anything out of this. Fallen Timbers, there is no extra cost associated with it, other than the fact that, I want to make it very clear, that the most service-consumptive thing a city can do is to have residential development. We'd all like to have a development, we don't live there, but we get the revenue off the businesses because it's very service consumptive. Because people demand services. People get angry when they don't get it. If they don't get their streets plowed or the salt done properly, they want that taken care of. Businesses typically don't do that. Inanimate objects don't do that. So that's what happens in typical. We also have a balance sheet. City never had a $10 million negative balance sheet on anything. In fact, we were just awarded an excellence award that only 3 to 5 communities in this state give, and I give that to Jennifer. We have an excellent accounting system, and our audits are second to none.
It's the second year in a row, too.
Second year in a row. So for people, but for somebody to get up and say that some untruth, whether they misunderstood it or not, to say that we had some negative balance sheet just isn't true. You can't ask the question and answer it in the negative the wrong way and have it be true. It doesn't work that way. EMS, that's a really big issue, right? Because the county plan would have cost all of you a ton of money. And let me explain why that is. We'd have had to raise more revenue than we did here because the county plan was we had one rig, and once in a while we'd supplement with paid-on-call people, which means we had terrible response times. 75% of our calls on that one county rig that we were paying half for on a $1.6 million a year expense for one rig to staff it with paramedics was outside of our city 75% of the time, mostly in South Toledo. That is why this council stood strong against the county on this, because the county's offer wasn't to decide that, oh, we want to give you the same deal. No. Their program was, oh, by the way, we want you to add another rig, and they're both in that system that draws our people out 75% of the time. And oh, by the way, you got to pay the difference. And then the county doubled down by saying, oh, you know that $800,000 a year we gave you? Now it's only $400,000. They cut our revenue in half and wanted us to supply double the amount of service to an area that isn't you. And we stood up for it. And believe me, I took a hit for it. There was all sorts of disinformation about that. But the issue is this council stood up for what was right so that when we had a levy, we were paying a levy to provide safety to our own residents, to people like Ryan or anybody in this room. When they had a medical emergency or a fire, our response times are down by half since we've done this. Has everybody else been able to do that? I mean, when the people took that $400,000 like Springfield did, there's no qualm that what Springfield took the extra money that we didn't have. Well, they have 5 or 6 fire levies now? We don't have that. I mean, this council did what it believed, what any of you sitting in this seat who had the information they had would have done exactly the same. They would have done exactly the same in the Metropolitan Holdings tax abatement. The reason I know that, this isn't the first community I've been in where somebody ran door to door to get rid of me and ends up being a friend of mine once they realize, when they get in, they realize, oh my gosh, this isn't run as bad as I thought. There's a lot of information I don't have. There's a lot of things that you do that I'm not even aware of because outside looking in seems so different. And I'm not going to go into, some of this other stuff, but the issue is we try our best to do what we believe is in the best use of our citizens. We understand that gets misunderstood, but it gets misunderstood when people put out documents like this that are almost 100% false. That the people who put them out have got to know they're false. We see this in our national politics. Why do we as citizens fall for that here? We're smarter than that. We're absolutely smarter than that. And I get it. There's some people on this recall effort that I saw in that picture standing there, I'm sure, if understood this stuff and was able to sit down and ask me any question they want. I don't care what it was they could ask me. I would tell them the truth, and I guarantee you they would look at it and say, I'm not so sure there's another way to do that. Because it gets exhausted up here in terms of from Ted to Phil to Gabe, everybody on here discusses these measures and thinks about them and mulls them over all the time. So, I get a little upset, and usually I blow it off. I have pretty big shoulders, I can let it go. People ask me all the time, how can you take that? People are just constantly attacking you. Okay, I do that. But I draw the line when your attacks are just hate-filled falsehoods. They're just false. I've never heard anything about me on social media that has been true, other than where I worked before. But the things you said about where I worked were absolutely false. I mean, one of the people the Blade talked to was somebody who got 3 votes to run for council in Jackson. 3 votes. That's how popular they were. So my point is, why don't we start, like Ryan said, why don't we start looking to things we have in common and start working to these goals? CMAQ was able to pull that off because they did their research and they were committed to doing it. And they weren't this negative, constant negative thing, because we are trying to do a job. And when we're constantly public records requests, because the public records request is trying to dig at something, I could just say, I know what you're going for, we don't have it, or it's over here. But to do that stuff, it's just constantly taking public officials' time, so we can't do the things that are necessary to create economic development, to make sure that you get the services you need. And I'm sorry if I insulted anybody, it was not my intention. I just simply, if you have questions, please call. We can answer these questions before they get to up here, and I have to answer them in a way that somehow cuts somebody's legs up from it. It's not my intention to do that. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know it was long, but I thought it was necessary. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your comments. I just want to add that the State of the City is on January 21st. It's a Tuesday at 11:30. It is actually a chamber-sponsored event at the Pinnacle. I think we're going to summarize some very good things that we've done in the past year and some good things that are coming in the next year. It will be I promise you, it will be factual. And I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged this past year, and I'm also encouraged with what I know is in the future for our city. So that's on January 21st. Also, I believe Martin Luther King is a holiday. Martin Luther King Day is a holiday here on the 20th. So council meeting will also be on Tuesday, January 21st in the evening. So I will take a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adjourn until our next regularly scheduled meeting on January 21st.
Yep.
I will second that motion.
Thank you. Call the roll.
Barrow.
Yes.
Fiskus.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
Kurt.
Yes.
Lineback.
Yes.
Noonan.
Yes.
Pufferberger.
Yes.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks.